Hello and welcome back to Terrain by Aaron. So I started this build with a cheap game I purchased from the Euro store, and this one's called Rocket Drop, but to all us oldies it will always be known as Kaplunk. Go on, Google it. I'll still be here. And did you Google it? No? Yes? Cool. So it would be rude not to use the rocket as a rocket, so I finally glued that bit together onto its base. Next I broke out various size bottles that I've been hoarding, like Katie Price collects ex-husbands, and as you can see it took me a while deciding on what size bottles would look good for this spaceship build. Then it was just a matter of slowly sanding and then gluing and sanding some more and gluing some more various lids and bottles to the main structure of the spaceship. As you can tell, I was in two minds whether to use the activation spray or the baking powder, but I opted for the activation spray for this build, so there's no baking powder or any white trails in this build. There was no real plan to anything of this this build. I was just marking things where lids was gonna go, and just kept adding what I felt looked good for the spaceship. I used a couple of felt pen lids just because I could, and mainly they were the correct size for the gap in the sides of the spaceship. Remember, if you ever your felt pens ever run out, just keep them, because they you never know when they're going to come in handy for these kind of builds. Then an old hand sanitizer bottle was used for underneath what I thought looked like the cockpit of the spaceship. I then used a lid from the an old spray bottle, was for the top of the cockpit, and I marvelled to myself on how both pieces actually fitted together nicely without taking any kind of measurements. These are compartment slot things I had left over from one of my builds. They actually come from a tray with a lid that holds all my greeblies in place. I thought I'd try and do as less cutting as possible on this one, and so just tidied up the edges and stuck them into place, and kind of made them look like panelling. Then I just thought it needed a bit more bulk, so I just used some bottle lids just to add a bit more depth and texture to the spaceship. And then to cover up the holes of the on the main body of the rocket. I used some of this granny grating. You can get it cheap off Amazon. That's where I got mine from, and it did nicely just to cover all the holes that were on the top end of the spaceship. It took ages for this to actually stick on, and I actually glued, I think I glued my finger. Yeah, you can see that I'm just using the nail file just to take off the hardened glue on my fingertips. I usually do that on a night time when I've done a build. It's not a good build unless you're sanding super glue off your fingertips. Next came the plastic drink straws. I just used as piping, just to give it a little bit of difference, so it looked like something was connected to the back and the back was connected to the front. And then some old cable from a pair of headphones I'd chopped up in a previous build. That was just to hide the seam along both panels. It wasn't necessary, but it was necessary for me because I knew the gap was there. Then lots of greeblies from my greebly box, stuck randomly around the spaceship. I used this to make it to look like it was some sort of extended sort of walkway or something. And then these greeblies are little transistors, I think, from the broken Xbox that I'd stripped down about a couple of months ago now. Once I was happy with the final shape, and I thought there was enough greeblies on the actual spaceship, I primed it black and then started painting a selection of areas of dark grey before moving onto the copper. And that's when I fell out with this build. Now, on some builds, as you're building it, you kind of like it and you can get on with it, but with this one I just don't know what was wrong. I don't know if it was the grey or if it was when I finally put the copper on. It didn't matter how much copper I put on, the less I liked the build. I probably painted about 4 layers of the copper, thinking that it'll grow on me, but no, it hadn't. And then I was thinking maybe I should just respray it all black and then just dry brush copper onto various parts, but just something was niggling me, and I didn't want to paint it blue like I'd painted my previous spaceships. So I thought, no, I've got to stick with it. I'm going to make it grey. So I stuck with the grey, but then I just left it. I walked away and started another project, not just one project but two projects, and I'd finished both of them projects by the time I even looked at this project again. I think it was about 4 days in total. It was just sat there, and at one point I was just going to throw it completely in the bin and just forget about it and just finish off the two projects I'd started. And like I said, 4 days went by. By day 5 I came home from work and repainted all the copper green. I know it's an unoriginal colour, but it meant I only had to do one coat and it was done. Not like the copper where it was taking me 3, 4, 5, 6 layers. So here's one tip I can offer you. If a project you're working on is beginning to annoy you, walk away, leave it, start something new. You'll eventually go back to the problem project and will have sorted it out in your head, and you'll finish it. There's no point throwing stuff away that you've started. Am I happy with this build? Yes and no. I like the spaceship, just not the colours. I think what's frustrating me now is I'm wanting to do stuff with paint that requires a spray gun, and I'll eventually get there, but until then things, start to annoy me. Anyway, that's the end of the build. Here's the glamour shots. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you saw, you know what to do. Hit all the buttons, and until next time, keep scratching that build.
Uh-oh.